Hello, I'm going to be talking to you today about the Equal Employment Opportunity Act and the Americans with Disability Act. My name is Tracy Bear, and this presentation is for my HIM 2012 class, Legal Aspects of Healthcare. I am in Mrs. Trabeck's class at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida. It is March 26, 2020. We're going to be talking about what the Equal Opportunity Act is and the Americans Disability Act. Who are affected by these acts and who started these acts? Where are the areas that are affected by these acts? When were these acts started? When were they amended? And how these acts actually work. The EEOA is an act that prevents employers from discriminating against employees by age, race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, political beliefs, and maternal or familiar status. The Americans with Disability is an act that prevents employers from discriminating against employees with disabilities. Disability is defined as a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movement, senses, or activities. President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, which included the Equal Employment Opportunity Act. It is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. President H.W. Bush, which is the senior, signed the Americans with Disability Act. The President George W. Bush, which is junior, signed the amendment to the Americans Disability Act. Every person who is employed is affected by these acts. Every person with a disability who wants to be employed is affected by these acts. Every person in the workforce, every person that's thinking about working, everybody is affected by these acts. These acts affect all employers with 15 or more employees, or 20 or more in age discrimination cases. These affect all federally funded programs, so you cannot be discriminated against when you are applying for federally funded programs, federally funded aid, anything. The Americans with Disability Act applies to schools, colleges, universities, both public and private. They have to grant you, if you have a disability, they have to accommodate you at these schools. They can't exclude you because of your disability. The Equal Opportunity Act was passed in 1964. The Americans with Disability Act was passed in 1990. And the amendment of the Americans with Disability Act was passed in 2009. Now, the amendment was passed to clarify the definition of disability and clarify the reasons that you can be discriminated against because of your disability. These acts provide protection from discrimination of people in the workforce. They the governing departments that enforce these acts is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That was started in 1974 by President Nixon. People were filing a lot of lawsuits, and so they had to figure out how to, combat all the lawsuits that were being filed because of discrimination. So the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission was established. Anytime you think you're being discriminated against in your workforce, you have to file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. You have to do that first before filing a lawsuit. That's the law. When you file a discrimination claim, how it works is you file it with the commission. You can do it by mail, you can do it in person, you can do it online. You file it, it goes through a review process, and within 10 days of that filing, they will submit the file to your employer. Now, the employer cannot retaliate against you. It's against the law, but they will know your name. If you want to remain confidential, the employer has the right to ask for your name. It's part of the law. Now, when the amendment to the Disabilities Act was passed, it clarified the verbiage. There were 2 cases that were overturned due to the passage of the amendment of the American Disabilities Act, and that was Toyota Manufacturing versus Ella Williams, and Sutton versus American Airlines. Both were cases of discrimination in the workplace. Toyota Manufacturing was this lady had developed carpal tunnel syndrome, and she wanted to have accommodations through Toyota because she was making cars and she wanted to have so she sued Toyota. The Sutton case is 2 twins wanted to be pilots, and they had corrected vision, and their corrected vision did not match the standards that United Airlines have, so they sued United Airlines. Both of those cases went to the Supreme Court. Both of them were basically turned down, and then therefore the amendment to the Americans with Disabilities Act to further explain disabilities and explain the verbiage of these acts, so it made them easier to enforce these acts. So I appreciate you listening. These protect employees of an employer of 15 or more. They affect all of us who are our employees, everybody who wants to have a job, everybody who's thinking about getting a job, who applies for a job. Every one of us that are in the workplace are affected by these acts. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and